Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan's army chief survives a drone attack. 5 others were killed in a strike that the military has blamed on the RSF paramilitary that it's been battling in a fierce war for over a year. Also, what's going on with AGOA, the high-stakes Africa-US trade program's less than a year on the clock? And although most parties to the deal seem keen for its renewal, the devil is always in the detail. I speak to the US Deputy Assistant Secretary for Africa about how the negotiations are going. And Pretoria is courting remote workers from anywhere in the world. Digital nomad visas let it economically tap into an emerging professional class who work virtually for foreign companies but live and spend their wages in South Africa. But first, Sudan's de facto ruler, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, ruled out negotiation with paramilitaries after he survived a drone attack on Wednesday whilst attending a military graduation ceremony. Our Laura Berstecker tells us more.
In the middle of a military parade, overseen by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the menacing sound of drones starts buzzing overhead, sending the crowd into a panic. The Sudanese army said 5 people were killed in the strike, which it blamed on the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The group has so far denied responsibility and blamed the attack on Islamist groups. Al-Burhan himself later appeared unharmed as he visited the wounded in hospital, surrounded by a cheering crowd. In a defiant speech, Sudan's de facto leader said the attack only reinforced his determination to continue the war.
We will not retreat, we will not surrender, and we will not negotiate with any party, whoever they are. Nothing scares us. We aren't afraid of any drones.
For the past 15 months, Sudan has been plunged in a brutal civil war, opposing the army to the powerful Rapid Support Forces. The conflict has already killed tens of thousands of people, and attempts at finding a diplomatic solution have so far hit a wall. The US recently invited both sides to negotiations next month in Geneva, but al-Burhan's latest statement appeared to rule out any further talks with the RSF or any other mediators.
Look now at some news in brief. A court in Guinea sentenced a former junta leader and dictator to 20 years in prison. Musa Dadis Camara, a military captain, was found guilty of crimes against humanity over the Presidential Guard's September 2009 stadium massacre, in which at least 157 were killed and dozens of women were raped as part of an armed takeover. Camara was ousted from power just months later and fled into exile before returning in 2022 for his trial. The UN's welcomed a ceasefire agreement between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. The deal over a resurgence of conflict in the eastern Congolese region of North Kivu was reached in Luanda by a meeting hosted by Angola. M23 rebels backed by Kigali have been terrorizing communities and battling Congolese forces since late 2021. This week's ceasefire comes ahead of the August 3rd expiration of a humanitarian truce between the M23 and government forces. And the African Union's Commission on Human Rights says that Kinshasa violated the rights of the indigenous Batwa community by evicting them from their ancestral lands 50 years ago. They were kicked out to expand the Kahuzi-Biega National Park near Lake Kivu. Around 13,000 Batwa were forced to leave in 1975 as part of a fortress conservation model. They've since struggled to recover and have continued to face persecution, exclusion, and violence. The Commission's called on the government to allow their safe return, offer them a public apology, and grant them their ownership of their lost lands. Now, it's not a sure thing, but the future of the African Growth and Opportunity Act seems optimistic. Since 2000, the programme has been boosting trade between the continent and the United States by giving qualifying countries tariff-free access to US markets. Now, it runs out next September, and support for its renewal seems pretty solid in US Congress, which is good news for a sector that thrives on predictability. Key figures in African and US trade have recently been in Washington, thrashing out how another spin around the block for AGOA could also be a chance for its evolution. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by the Deputy Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, Joy Basu. Thank you so much for making time to speak to me, Joy. First of all, give us a bit of a rundown. How did last week's AGOA Forum go? What for you were the achievements and the sticking points?
Thank you so much for having me, and we are very excited about last week's AGOA Forum. We believe it was a success. There were a few big accomplishments, particularly the affirmation of the administration's position to really support our colleagues in Congress in a reauthorization of this legislation.
Now, the AGOA has been running since 2000. Can you hear me? Okay, so AGOA has been running since 2000, 24
I can hear
years.
you. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Set the scene for us. What has AGOA achieved to date over the last 24 years that it's been running?
It has been running for 24 years, and we are very proud of its successes. There are, as you mentioned in the top, about 6,900 product lines that are eligible for duty-free access to the United States. We believe this has helped to make African products more competitive on the global stage. It has helped to create jobs, and it has helped to really reinforce U.S.-Africa economic partnership and the economic strength between our countries. The goal of AGOA is really to facilitate investment in Africa and to facilitate job creation. And we're proud of the progress it's made, and we know that there's so much more it can do, and we're committed to working with our colleagues in Congress to see how we can facilitate that.
So what's next for it, though? How do you update a program like AGOA? The trade landscape, not just for Africa, but globally, is so different to what it was in 2000. What's needed to modernize the program to service the needs of both the continent and the US?
It's a great point, and as you know, when AGOA was first initiated in the early 2000s, the internet was still new, email was still new, and now we're looking at a continent that is so digitally forward, that shows such incredible tech leadership. We look at so many industries in the future that will rely on technology, rely on new industries. We really look to our colleagues in Congress and the trade experts they've been speaking to about how they can improve not only the number of product lines that use AGOA and how our partner countries benefit from it, but also what new industries should we be thinking about, what new incentives should we be thinking about. So there's a number of options on the table, and I thank our colleagues in Congress and so many partners in Africa and here in civil society for raising those issues and those opportunities.
Now, from what I understand, one of the points that was made last week was that AGOA is not just for trade. Now, we've seen currently there are 32 eligible African countries in the program. And over the last year, I think Gabon, Niger, Uganda, and the Central African Republic were expelled because of coups or rights abuses. There is some concern from some that there's been a bit of mission creep from in AGOA. Is it a tool to enforce certain standards and principles that don't go directly to trade? Or is it just about trade? And are you willing to budge on any of those human rights criteria that are currently necessary for countries to remain eligible?
Since its initiation, AGOA has been about facilitating trade by setting up the right enabling environment to really attract high-quality investment. And so that's why so many of these eligibility criteria go to the conditions in which governments set up for companies to be investing in. And so that is a core part of AGOA. It will maintain a core part of AGOA. And that is not only because these are shared values between the American people and African people across the continent, but also because those are the conditions that companies want to see in order to be investing long-term in the continent.
Now, Africa itself is moving quickly towards kind of integrating its own landscape to trade amongst itself. Really central to that is the African Continental Free Trade Area. How do you see that instrument interacting with AGOA's aims going forward?
Excellent. We see so many opportunities for overlap and for the AFCFTA and AGOA to really reinforce each other. So we are big supporters of the AFCFTA and have many agreements and an MOU with the Secretariat in Accra. And we would like to help enable successful, effective, and efficient implementation of the protocols that AFCFTA has generated. I know there was a big one on digital protocol that was released. We would like to be a partner in helping to implement the AFCFTA's vision so that we can increase trade, make it easier for companies to invest, and ensure that African countries and African communities are benefiting from the incredible assets they have from across borders and within borders.
So what's next from here? Do you see, for example, the US elections having any impact on AGOA's future?
The future of AGOA rests with Congress. I think the good news is that we have heard bipartisan and bicameral support for AGOA in Congress. So that means that Democrats and Republicans, both in the Senate and the House, have expressed their support for a reauthorization of AGOA. And so they are the ones that hold the pen. We in the administration support an early reauthorization of AGOA and are excited to support our colleagues on the Hill, however we can, in getting this over the line.
Thank you so much. Joy Basu, Deputy Assistant Secretary for African Affairs in the US, joining me there on what is in store and what some of the key issues are as talks continue about what happens in that push to renew the AGOA programme. Well, finally, remote workers who have been tempted to move to South Africa and take advantage of a recently introduced digital nomad visa offer both opportunities to the communities where they now spend their money, but also some have met with opposition as locals feel that they're being priced out by the newly arrived big spenders. Our team in Cape Town sent this report.
At the foot of Table Mountain, digital nomads meet up in co-working spaces. They can work in any country but have discovered the charming city of Cape Town. Emily just returned from Greece. She's been on the move for 8 years. South Africa suits her perfectly.
It's very nice because you don't have time differences. Only when it's winter here, you have 1 hour. Which is actually nice because then you have an extra hour in the morning. So people love to go surfing or hiking before they start working.
Emily works for a Spanish company but also manages her own platform for local entrepreneurs. Next to her is Simon, who is British. He's based in Dubai but is considering a move.
Yeah, so Dubai the last few years has got even more expensive than it used to be. So price-wise, obviously you get a lot better lifestyle here for the money you spend on it.
Nadim, a Russian of Palestinian origin, is based in Dubai, but is applying for a visa.
Yeah, you want to be comfortable here legally, right? I'm not working full-time from Cape Town, but I would love to be able to spend more time here.
The South African authorities allow remote workers to stay in the country for up to 2 years. The visa is open to people earning over 50,000 euros a year. The aim is to attract visitors who will bring in foreign currency.
Even though they're not paying taxes in our country, but they're spending here. So their family come to visit, they're spending the same amount of money that they would on accommodation at home. They're now spending the food, etc. So their disposable income is the impact that we're seeing.
Many accuse foreign workers of driving up rental and restaurant prices. Cape Townians are divided.
The locals are not going to be able to afford like us. We don't afford, but now the foreigners are taking all over this space.
They're not stealing anyone's job. It's a fair share, so I don't know why some people would find it a problem.
The influx of remote workers will add to the millions of people who visit the Western Cape every year.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again. Till then, take care.